My name is Kurt Hansen. I am an ecologist. I work for a civil engineering firm. We're actually the village engineers in Forest Park, which is where I live. And I'm a volunteer with the Deep Roots Project, which was started by Estelle and Will, who's behind you, and a couple of other people living in the whole Oak Park River Forest area. But the whole idea of the Deep Roots Project is to help everyone here better connect to your food. So knowing where it's coming from, learning how to grow it, learning what it can look like in its multiple shapes and forms, and then trying to reconnect you with a way where if there's something that you really want and you can't find in the store, you can learn to grow it yourself. Okay, so we're going to start from the top, and we're going to talk about your garden, which we kind of already did as we went around the room. Here we go. Hey, this is the right one. Your garden. So I already asked everybody kind of what sort of garden you've grown. The other thing I really want you guys to shout out is what sort of plants have you guys have experienced growing in your own garden. So I heard you talked about celery. You talked about some squashes. Was they winter or summer squashes? Both?
Summer.
Okay, summer squashes. Everybody else, what sort of plant? Snow peas? Everybody else, just yell them off.
Berries.
Berries? What sort of berries?
Currants, gooseberries, grapes are not berries, are they? I don't know.
Strawberries? Anybody grow strawberries?
Strawberries.
Strawberries are fun.
Raspberries.
Yeah. Okay, wow, that's a lot of berries. That's nice. Cool yard. Sounds like a lot of perennials.
That's why we didn't have room for that squash.
Yeah. Everyone yell out some more.
Lettuces.
Lettuces? What sort of lettuce? You like the loose leaf, the romaine, the more like butter heads?
I don't remember.
It's okay, sorry, I wasn't trying to throw it in the spot.
Loose leaf.
Loose leaf lettuces, okay. Anybody else grow any sorts of lettuce?
Mm-hmm.
Tomatoes? What sort of tomatoes? Do you do cherry tomatoes, the big like beefsteak tomatoes? Okay, so maybe like plum-sized tomatoes. Okay, nice. Anybody else? Throw some stuff out.
Kale.
Kale, so a really big green. And kale, what are you saying? Chard, yep. Beets. So beets, you can eat beets and radishes. You can eat just the greens if you're getting a shady spot. If it's in a more sunny spot, you actually get the nice tuber. Okay, that's really awesome. Who has any sort of flower garden? Nobody? So no one? Okay. There we go. I said that, and then all of a sudden the hands go up. Okay. So the reason I bring up the flower garden, too, is there's no reason you can't have both your vegetable garden and your flower garden. And we'll actually talk a lot about mixing them together and some of the benefits that come out of that. And then the last one, we already know you have some of it in your yard, but does anyone have any perennial like food or edible plants in their yard? So what do you have? Raspberries.
Asparagus.
Asparagus, yeah, asparagus is a fun one. If you haven't grown asparagus before, once you get it going, it takes, if you buy just rootstock, you can get going almost immediately. But if you're going to grow it from seed, it takes like 5 years to get rolling. But with asparagus, it'll grow a couple of inches every hour when you're at harvesting time. So you really got to check on it pretty often, because otherwise your asparagus will just go and it turns into a bush if you let it go. When you're cutting off the asparagus branches you actually get at the store, it's just the first couple inches of asparagus that comes out of the ground. And it looks unreal, like someone just went to the store, grabbed asparagus, and just shoved the stalks in the ground. Asparagus is fun. Okay, what? Potatoes?
Root carrots.
What were you saying?
Roots.
Carrots, yeah, some root vegetables.
Rhubarb.
Rhubarb comes back every year. That's okay. Awesome. So the first thing we're going to start with the very basics here and say if you're planning on a location for either your new garden or an existing garden, we got a few really big factors to consider. The first one is sunlight. The really big thing with sunlight is different plants require different amounts of sunlight to grow. I grabbed this graphic from the Fearless Food Gardening in Chicagoland, but the really big thing that we're talking about here is we usually talk about southern exposure. So the whole idea of southern exposure is that throughout the year, the sun is coming to us from the south, and depending on how much of your property is facing south, that's where you're getting that light all throughout the day, or as much of the day as possible that isn't hindered by your neighbors or buildings or any sort of other vegetation you might have sitting around. But even if you don't have direct southern exposure, what we're trying to look at here is the orientation of your lot, any man-made structures or existing vegetation, and how that affects how much sun is hitting your piece of property each day. And the variations in how much light you're getting help you decide where you should put your garden and what sort of plants you should try to grow. Right here, this is a picture of what's someone working out their garden sun map. The whole idea of garden sun mapping we really go over in detail in the Deep Roots ebook that we've been working on here for the last couple of months. But the whole idea is you either use a camera, whether it's a digital camera or your phone camera, or you set up a video camera, or you can even go out there and just take a look in your backyard on a weekend every couple hours. But you're trying to get an idea of all throughout the day with what portions of your property or of your garden or the lot you might be using at the community garden are seeing sunlight. The reason being, you're probably seeing those tag names over there. So you've got sun, part shade, and shade. The whole idea is those different plants need different hours, different amounts of light, direct sunlight throughout the day to produce whatever your end crop fruit might be. We hit one of the two of the examples, the exceptions to the rule earlier when we talked about beets and turnips. If you're growing beets and turnips, even if you have less sun than they require, you might not get a real hardy beet or real hardy turnip, but you'll still get a lot of greens. So you still come up with a crop at the end. But that's where really quickly to kind of run through some of the different crops you can grow. If you're looking at like 6+ hours of sun, I mean, you've got a lot of sun. That's your full sun plant. And that's a plant where it's usually going to pump out what is a really big fruit connected to whatever the greenery is that's actually putting together that power. So that's your corn, your tomatoes, peppers, beans, as you can see, winter and summer squash, melons, potatoes, cucumbers, and then your culinary herbs. And the reason that your culinary herbs start to fall in that group too is because a lot of those, the ones that we grow, at least around here, we try to grow a lot of, I guess besides basil, a lot of them are perennials, so they're putting a lot of power into their roots, but where your basil will die every single year. 4 to 6 hours of sun, so that's where you're getting, that's like your partial sun situations that you're looking at your broccoli, your cabbage in the cool seasons, and then your cauliflower, kale, and your Brussels sprouts. If you're kind of seeing the difference between these plants and these plants, you're looking at these are more of your leafy plants where the fruit is also built up with leaves. Where your broccoli is a bunch of little florets, basically. So it's a bunch of flowers made of leaves, and cabbage the same way, and your cauliflower, kale, etc., down to Brussels sprouts. So as we're starting to move away from the amount of sun, we're getting into more of the greenery. When you get to 2 to 4 hours of sun, which now you're looking, that's at your part shade. I mean, then you're really getting in your greens. It's your spinach, Swiss chard, lettuce, endive, muscovy, arugula, bok choy, mustard greens, and parsley. A lot of them that fit in here too, actually, is a lot of the different Asian vegetables that are really starting to get more and more popular here in America. If you get any of like those big seed catalogs, a lot of the seed catalogs these days are talking about if you have more shade or in your cool seasons, a lot of the very similar vegetables that they'll grow over in Asia can grow here very, very well. And that's what we were actually having a conversation about this earlier today, Estelle and I. There are the same family as our broccoli that they raise over in Asia that is, if they've got smaller florets, but they do really, really great around here in the cold, and they have a lot less of the pest issues that our broccoli does because they haven't been in America for quite as long. And then with less than 2 hours of sun, not going to sugarcoat it, you're in for a challenge, but you can definitely do something. You're looking at your loose leaf lettuces, and then like we were talking about before, your radish and your beet, just the greenery. The other thing I wanted to tell you guys about is I just kind of broke down how different plants need different amounts of light. What you can do is if you want to have a good mixture of all of those things, but you have direct southern exposure, or you're sitting on a balcony and you've got all the light that's coming on your balcony and you're not sure how to get shade, you can grow your own shade. So what you can see here, you've got a couple, this is Estelle's garden, but you can see she's got a tall grass that's right here that's blocking and actually creating shade. Over here she's got, it looks like basil plants that she's trying to get more sunlight, so she's upturned some planters to put them on top of there and raise them up. I'll tell you the way that I plan out my garden, we'll see a little bit later when we get further into this presentation, is I actually, right in the middle of my planter, have a trellis that I put up, but then I grow my green beans and my tomatoes up so that they're capturing all that sunlight, and then they're getting, everything behind is getting shaded out a little bit. So if you have a situation where you have too much sun and not enough shade, you can grow your own shade or build your own shade. And then vice versa, if you're sitting in a situation where you have a lot of shade, it's usually your best bet to start moving towards the plants that are best suited for that shade to get more actual produce out at the end. Someone was talking about having problems with your tomatoes producing. I don't remember who that was. Yeah, your tomatoes producing.
I see why, right?
Yeah.
The other slide. I don't have enough sun.
Yeah, and when tomatoes, they need a lot of sun to get going, and they need a lot of heat too. And that's where we'll talk about your cool and your warm season plants. And that's where this past year was very strange with tomatoes. If last year was your first year doing tomatoes, do not be disheartened, because last year it was cold till very, very late. And what they need is with a certain photo period and a certain amount of heat. So the amount of sun that is out throughout the day, tomatoes need a very high photo period, and they need a lot of warmth to actually start producing those tomatoes and get those sugars going to make it taste as sweet as they are. So last year was a funny year from that. Okay.